Hey everybody, I'm Greg Sowell, and this is Why Am I, a podcast where I get to talk to interesting people and trace a path to where they find themselves today. My guest this go around is Nikki Vasconez. She's a lawyer turned pet psychic. Yeah, you heard me correctly. She regularly connects with pets' clients to communicate things from what makes a pet happy to what actually might be making them sick. One of the fascinating parts is that she found that this is a learned skill, and she regularly teaches workshops on how to do it yourself. My main takeaway is that she is teaching people to stop, reflect on how they feel, and then convey that to their pets in the simplest terms they know how to use. I think now especially, every human could use a little training on how to truly connect with each other. And if that has to start with talking to your pet, then so be it. I hope you enjoy this chat with Nikki. Nikki Vasconez, thank you for joining me on the Why Am I podcast.
Thanks, Greg. I'm so happy to be here and chat today.
Excellent. Dude, your lighting looks so nice. You just look like you're bathed in warm sunlight over there.
You know what? It's so funny you say that because I was playing with the windows this morning because it's so bright and sunny. And I'm like, there's a shadow here. And I just couldn't get rid of it. I'm like, you know what? We're just going with it.
Oh, I love it. It's just like, I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm getting spring fever. It happens to me every year. And so it's like, you're definitely giving me spring fever vibes.
I'm with you. I just can't wait for papayas. So I want the hot weather. So there's papayas in the stores.
Papayas. Okay. So based on papayas, I am new to your town, and a mutual friend of ours has put us together. You are taking me to the local farmer's market. You're going to show me all of the best places to all the best stalls to shop and all that stuff. And so we really don't know each other. So I talk about me because, you know, I care about me more than anybody else, obviously. So we exhaust that quickly, and now it's your turn to reciprocate. So who are you, Nikki?
So am I showing you food at the farmer's market, or am I just introducing myself?
You're just introducing yourself.
So I am Nikki. I talk to animals, and most people at that point are like, what did you just say? And I just talk about what that is and how, well, I probably wouldn't say, hey, I talk to animals. I would first say, hey, have you ever had a papaya? And if you don't like papayas, you never had a ripe one. Okay, so let's go get you a papaya. And then people are always like, so what do you do? Right? It's the question that every human asks. And then I would just tell them, I talk to animals. I didn't always do it. It's super cool. You can learn to do it. And it changed my life.
Well, you say that. I think, doesn't everybody talk to animals? Like, I talk to my dogs all the time and stuff. But
100%.
But it's
so
different what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, like people talk to their animals, but the majority of humans don't realize that the animals are actually understanding everything that you're saying, and they're responding to you. So most of us are like, how was your day? Tell me all about it. But you're not actually thinking that they're answering your questions. You think you're just kind of having a one-way conversation with yourself. But it's telepathy, it's telepathic communication. We can have a two-way dialogue with animals. We just have to remember how to do it, because humans, we're all innately psychic, telepathic beings. And some people hear the word psychic and they're like, oh, you're getting all woo-woo with me. But that's just innate within all humans, like that gut feeling, that intuition we have. That's psychic abilities that we all have as human beings. So Greg, you're absolutely right that we all talk to animals. But what I'm more so referring to when I say that is having a two-way dialogue, asking a question and receiving their answer back to you.
That's fascinating. So the idea of, I say whatever it is to my dog and they actually understand me and then they're trying to speak back. Do you feel like they're reading the intentions? I mean, how is it you feel they understand? Like I don't know. I'm sure you don't know like the quantum mechanics of it, but like break it down and like how you understand it to exist.
All right. So Greg, listen to this example. Have you ever had a time where your cell phone rings and you know who's calling you without even looking at the phone?
For sure.
Can you recall? Right? How did you know
pretty
that?
Often.
Yeah. Like you just know, or you get a feeling like, you know what, I should reach out to this person, and you don't know why you had that thought. You just did. You called them. They're having a really bad day. Things like that. Have you experienced that?
Sure.
Yeah. That's intuition. That's your psychic abilities as a human. So with animals and their understanding, you might be like, you got off track there, Nikki, like that wasn't my question. But we all have this ability to pick up on the feelings and thoughts and energy of others. And when I say energy, it's not like, oh, you're feeling my energy, but you really are, because we have this electromagnetic bubble around us, right? That's why if I were to come into your studio and you didn't know I was there and I just was staring at you, it would only take you a couple seconds to be like, who the heck is behind me, right? So with our animals, yes, they understand the physical words. That's how dog training, right? You can say certain words, they respond, of course. But they also understand the silent words in our mind. That's why if you are just thinking how you are about to take your animal to the vet, you don't ever say it out loud, they go and hide. And you have to search your house for an animal that's hiding because they don't want to go to the vet. Or you're thinking, should we go to the park now? Like you're asking yourself, your dog jumps and runs to the door. So the animals, they receive what we're thinking. And then with that, they receive what we're feeling. That's why, like, if we suddenly get nervous or we're anxious, our animals can pick up on that and display some of those same behaviors. When I do my animal communication sessions for clients, it's never in person. I do everything through a picture. So I'm not reading body language. I'm not saying questions out loud. The animal's not hearing me. It's all silent. I'm in my own room in Pennsylvania. My clients are all over the world. And what I do is I look at the animal's picture and I just close my eyes and I imagine my heart connecting with their heart. I utilize like this image in my mind of like a beam or a cord of light just energetically connecting us. And I'll just say, do you like your food? My eyes are shut. And I'll either receive a happy feeling or I'll see an image of them eating really fast. So I can't give you like the science explanation as to like how that message is transmitted from my mind to theirs. It just is. So when you say to your animals, like an example is if your dog is jumping up on the couch and you don't want them to jump on the couch, you don't want to say, don't jump on the couch. Because when you say that, the image in your mind, they're hearing what you're saying, but they're also receiving the image in your mind. The image in your mind when you say don't jump on the couch is you're picturing them jumping on the couch. If I say to you, don't think about a room with the lights on, you're thinking about a room with the lights on. So what you want to say instead is keep your paws on the ground, because then the words that you're saying and the image in your mind match and you're not sending mixed messages. So if you say, don't jump on the couch, the animal hears your words, but then they receive the mental image in your mind. And there's no way to form a mental image of a negative, of a don't or a stop. You actually just picture what you actually don't want them to do. So then they're like, okay, you said, don't jump on the couch, but you're picturing me jumping on the couch. What do you want me to do? So they're receiving our messages in all of these different ways, verbally, mentally. And that's how animal communication happens. It's just sending that message to them and they pick it up. And humans, like the birds in the sky, right? They all swoosh and move and dip down at the exact same second. There's not like a leader in front saying, all right, guys, in 2 seconds, we're going to make a hard right, right? How do they all move at the same time? That's telepathic communication. Or all of the deer in the field run at the exact same moment. So animals are already masters at telepathy. It's just us humans, we have to relearn how to do it, because when verbal language came to be, we kind of shut off our intuition. And that's how the animals communicate with each other. And that's how we can communicate with them. It's a lot more simple than I think most people think. It's not like you have to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to effectively communicate with animals. It's literally just speak to them like I'm speaking to you right now.
That's interesting. So many interesting questions. So you're talking about how you communicate with animals over distance via just a picture. Do you think if their owner wasn't on, say, like a Zoom call with you or something like that, you'd still be able to make that connection? Do you think maybe somehow it goes through the owner, or is it just you directly to the animal?
I love that you just asked that, because are you saying if I'm on like a Zoom with you and I don't see your animal?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yes, that's totally fine. So back in the day, like before we had all this crazy technology stuff, right? There were animal communicators out there and they didn't really have a way to get a picture of the animal if they were doing it remotely. So a lot of the pioneer animal communicators, all they use is a name and a description. So you do not need a picture. It's just setting the intention to have the conversation with whom you want to have the conversation. The other day, actually, my dad and stepmom were in Florida and their friends' dogs were having a skin issue. My dad called me and said, hey, if you have a moment, could you try to figure out like what's going on? No one can figure it out. The vets are stumped. And at that time, he didn't have a picture, but I know the humans. So I sat outside on my deck and I was just thinking of Dan and Jen, the humans. And I was like, all right, I know you guys. I want to connect with your dogs through you. And it came through just the same. And the issue was something that was being sprayed in the grass. And at first I was like, I don't think people in Florida spray their grass. But it turns out it was something that he was cleaning he called it a side by side. I didn't know what that was. It's like a 4-wheeler thing. Something he was cleaning his side by side. It was a heavy chemical to get off all the clay and the mud. And he started doing it lately in the backyard, in the grass where the dog runs around and stuff. And he just wasn't thinking. So that came through without even having a picture. So yes, you don't need the picture. If I'm on Zoom with someone, 100% that can happen.
That's fascinating. How is it do you think you're able to like, my brain imagines kind of like just like a bunch of chords and you figure out the proper receptacle to plug yours into. It's like
you mean with the animal?
Yeah. Well, just with the animal. It's like, how do you, golly, it just seems so fascinating. Like but you're maintaining those connections via the owner, right? Like, so initially you had that conversation with the owner and that's how you actually kind of divine that connection sort of?
No, because all my people are all over the world. And because I only do remote sessions, I don't know 98% of the people I do sessions for. So when they submit this form online, I just have their name. I don't know who they are or their pictures or anything. I don't really do sessions on Zoom. So when all I have is a picture of the animal. So when I'm connecting in, it's really through just the animal. Yes, I know the humans' names, but I don't know them. But in this situation with my dad's friend, I didn't have a picture. I did know the humans. So that's why I connected in with the animal through the humans. But normally I look at the animal's picture. I just look at their eyes and I keep looking at like my hand right here because I always have the picture in my phone to the left of me. I don't know why. So I just look at the animal's photo for a couple seconds, look at their eyes. I imagine that beam coming from my heart to their heart. That's not necessary to do. It's just something I started doing. And it's really just setting the intention, Greg. It's not like you have to plug into the right spot or enter into this animal communication dimension, right? I mean, kind of. You're entering into like a space where all communication is possible, but it's really just looking at the picture, setting the intention that you want to connect with that animal, closing your eyes and asking questions and just saying what comes to you. Now, you mentioned the word imagination. One of the main questions I get, and this past weekend, I just taught 2 4-hour workshops of teaching people to do this because every month I host 2 introduction to animal communication workshops, teaching people that, hey, you can already do this. And a question that I get all the time is, Nikki, how do I know if it's the animal or my imagination and I'm just making things up? And my answer is that just comes with practice. Because in reality, it kind of feels like you're having a conversation with yourself always until you learn, okay, wait a minute, there's no way I would have randomly thought about that. But the message is how it comes to you. It's kind of the same as like if you were reading a book silently to yourself. It's your own voice in your head, but you just get better at it, just like with anything else. The more you practice, the stronger the muscle develops. And animal communication, Greg, is not a gift. It's a skill. It's something we can all do. It just takes practice.
Do you think like it's an innate evolutionary trait? And
oh, yeah.
Like I think about like when we're little kids, like we use our imagination all the time and we do all this stuff. And then as we grow up, like that just kind of, we lose that. Do you think it's something like we as people have just kind of lost over time?
Totally. It goes back to something I said a little bit ago about how when verbal language came to be, when we started speaking words, we stopped really using our intuition or our telepathic abilities because we would just ask someone, what do you need? What do you want? As opposed to feeling what they needed and what they wanted. That's why children love animals. And I don't have any kids right now, so I don't have like personal experience with this, but maybe you do or friends. But kids are always saying like, hey, mommy, our doggy said this, or the dog needs this, and the parents just laugh it off like, oh, that's so cute, honey, like the dog told you that. But no, the dog really did tell them that, because children, they haven't learned to shut this off. Us humans, like, it's not, this telepathic stuff isn't nurtured in the modern world. We're so focused on work, money, speech, right? We don't like trust ourselves intuitively. So yes, this is something innate with all humans. How does a baby who comes out of the woman know to breastfeed? How do they know that? Like, they already have that sucking motion, right? They're not taught, oh, this is how you get food. They latch right on. It's because there are these things innate within us that we just have as human beings, these sudden knowings and these things that we are just like born with.
Do you think, and I know this feels like a divergence a little bit, but do you feel like people can utilize those skills with each other as well to some degree?
Oh, yeah, 100%. There's something called, have you ever heard of remote viewing?
I don't think so.
So remote viewing it fascinates me. And I took a free course and I was going to dive into that, but I didn't really like the style that person taught it. There's many different ways, but remote viewing is where you, in your mind, you can actually view a place somewhere else and get questions. Like if you lose your keys or you lose your phone, you can sit down. I always sit down. I guess you could stand, but you just internally go in your mind and you remote view. You ask, okay, show me where my keys are. Stuff like that is 100% possible. People do it with like the military. This course I took, she talked a lot about how this actually started in the military and they would remote view to like get codes and, you know, spies of other countries and whatever. I don't really know much about that, but remote viewing is totally a thing. I haven't really dived into that or dove into that, but yeah, we can do this with that. We can do it with each other. Like sometimes I practice, like my husband's like, when I'm not here, tune in and like see where I am and what I'm doing. So I've been like, I try and do that sometimes, but I feel like I'm too close with him that I just kind of like get in my own way, because with animal communication or with connecting with humans, like if you care about the person or you're invested in the outcome, you can kind of block the flow. So like if something's going on with my animals health-wise, I cannot connect in and figure out what's going on because I'm too biased. I get in the way. So with humans, I totally think that we can do it. If you're trying to connect with like a deceased loved one, you might have too much emotion there. You might not be able to. But animals, humans, the telepathy, that connection is just the same, in my opinion.
That's fascinating. I mean, that totally makes sense. I've seen that in my life where people want something so bad that they will convince themselves of something. And
right.
We get in our own way, I guess, as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. And Greg, something you said in the beginning about, what was it? I just thought it just lost my mind. It just slipped my mind. When we were talking about when your phone rings and you know who it is, that's you connecting with that person and you know they're calling you. So it's the same thing. Or like when you feel like someone's having a bad day or you really need to reach out to them and you do, and they are having a bad day, you just connected in with them. And that's how you receive that information.
Do you feel like this is strengthening the connection between you and your partner?
Oh, yeah. Because it makes you just more aware of yourself and it makes you more aware of your surroundings. It increases your bond and love for your animals. And if you don't even have animals, just with yourself, really. And this sounds a little cliche, but like the more you love yourself, the more you can love others. Because if you're not happy with yourself, you can't give that. You can't give people that which you don't have yourself. So I think it brought a lot more compassion 100% into our lives.
Can't give people that which you don't have yourselves. I love that line.
Yeah.
Something I wrote down earlier was like the idea of like you're doing these things with intention. So I was thinking about relaying that to your partner. Like if you really, like you said, you sit down, maybe kind of close your eyes and you really concentrate on what it is you want to convey. I could see how that could be definitely useful with, you know, everyday connection with other humans, you know?
Absolutely. And it really enhances your ability to communicate. Because a quick example, when I'm talking to the animals, you always want to ask you always want to have one subject per question. So I don't want to say, did you enjoy your walk yesterday? And do you like going to the park? It's like, wait a minute, one question. Did you enjoy your walk? New question later. Do you like going to the park? Or I don't want to say, do you like your food and the position in which you eat? No, like one question, so mastering that and the ability to speak clearly and efficiently and to really convey what you're trying to say helps you communicate with humans in your life, really helps you be more clear in all avenues. And the foundation of a relationship is communication, right? They cannot succeed without that.
I mean, it's so funny because like one of the things I do as an occupation is take complex concepts and break them down into human readable bites. And it's so funny that like oftentimes we'll do stuff in our day-to-day work, and then we don't realize that we can translate that to our personal lives as well, right? It's like these things that are so successful over here, why wouldn't I use them in my everyday life? And
and Greg,
really cool.
It's not easy to take something complicated and to make it easy to understand. So that's awesome. My husband's sister is a doctor, and I'll hear her talking to her doctor friends about something, and I'm like, what are you saying? And then she'll explain it in like layperson words, and I'm like, oh, but she's a master at explaining it so simply. And I always say, or my husband always says, the true knowledge is being able to make something complicated, make it very easy to understand. If you have to use all these big words and stuff, like what? No, like what are you actually trying to convey?
Yeah, 100% agree. I'm a big word nerd, so I'm an efficiency of words. If I can use one word that saves me four others, I try and do that. But you've got to know your audience, right? You got to know who you're talking to. And I think it's really cool how this gives you reps, right? Because like you said, this is something you could develop. I feel like virtually any skill you can get, it's like a muscle. You just got to work it out, right? You got to get those repetitions in. And this is definitely going to help you do it. I mean, one of the terms I tell other people is explain it to me like I'm 5, right? It's like, break it down to really simple terms. And if I want to go even simpler, like in my mind, I never thought about it. Explain it like you're explaining it to your dog. So it would need to be very simplified. And I actually see that as like a very useful skill.
And it's funny because our human minds, we worry about everything, right? Obviously we're human. We have bills and jobs and stress and sickness and all that stuff. And our animals, they're picking up on all of that. So like if we're really anxious and stressed and all over the place, our animals can start exhibiting behaviors out of nowhere, peeing in the house, scratching the couch, doing whatever. But it's because they don't know how to handle the energy that we're putting off. And then when we but when we bring ourselves back into balance, our animal's behavior can change instantly. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. So this is endlessly fascinating, but part of the way my brain works is how did somebody find themselves in this place here, right? So you didn't just wake up one day and say, I could speak to animals, because you said it's a skill you could develop. So tell me about kind of the evolution of how you even came to start doing this stuff.
I did not learn that this was possible until I was 28 years old. So I used to be a litigation attorney. I was in a big city near me. I was in court every day. I was so stressed. Both of my eyes were twitching at separate times. It was just I was not in alignment with what I needed to do, but I didn't know what I needed to do, right? I went to college and I was like, what do I want to be when I grow up? I have no idea. Let's go to law school. Like, why not? Okay. Like great reason to go to law school, right? But that so many people are like, I don't know what to do. And they just like pick something. So I was not happy from the beginning. And I was in court. And there was one day I was like, I need to get out of this place. Like I was just getting in so many car accidents. Again, car accidents. Obviously things happen, but I got into 3 car accidents in 1 year. They weren't bad ones, but I was like, something is off. Like I am not where I need to be. So I quit the law firm, started working at a wellness center down the street from my house, took like a $60,000 pay cut. And it was the best decision of my life. And it was at that wellness center, one of the massage therapists could talk to animals. She had been doing it for years, not professionally, but just for friends and family. And when I learned that she could do this, I was like, what did you just say? And then the books behind me, this bottom row here, I just went home and looked up animal communication books and just bought all of them by all different authors. And every single book by all these different authors said everyone can talk to animals. And I was like, well, I'm everyone, so I'm going to try. And I just started practicing. And I started getting phenomenal feedback. I was super blessed to have an acupuncturist who I'd been seeing for years, who works with people all day long, right? And she would tell her clients, hey, I have a client who's trying this new thing of animal communication. She needs practice animals. Do you want me to pass along your information? So 3 or 4 times a week, I would get a text from my acupuncturist with an animal's picture, their name and gender, and then an email for the humans. And I would just do a free session, send it to them. They would give me feedback. And that's how it started for me. I just started getting phenomenal feedback and slowly convinced myself that like I was really doing this, because remember, I didn't grow up doing this. You know, I wasn't a kid hearing from my animals or my friends' animals or the birds. I wasn't seeing spirits or like none of that. I just played soccer, had hamsters, and like did gymnastics. I don't know. I ate ice cream in McDonald's. Like it wasn't like I was doing anything different. And then when I learned that this was possible in my late 20s and I just started practicing, everything changed. And shortly thereafter, I left the wellness center. Well, I started doing practice sessions, left the wellness center, got back into the law. I was doing real estate planning, wills and trusts and stuff. Not fun. Did that for about a year. And then eventually went part-time lawyer, part-time animal communicator. And then when I eventually built up enough of a kind of client flow, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the leap. And I quit the firm, went full-time animal communication, and it took off. The first week I quit the law firm and was full-time animal communication, I got so many readings, I was booked out for like a month and a half. So that was like a little nugget of reassurance, like you did the right thing. And then it just has been awesome ever since.
That's cool. So you're working at the wellness center and you hear the masseuse, I guess, casually mention this. Like, why do you think, like, what do you think your headspace was that like clicked with you? Like, I've got to know more about this, such that you go and buy a library of books to start researching. How do you think it is that you were primed, like right at that moment, to just have this thing hit you so hard?
So a couple things. One, me at the wellness center started out great and then got not so great, because my views of food and lifestyle was the complete opposite of them. So there was like tension, and I always felt like I was having to defend myself because I was a vegan and they didn't agree with that. You know, like I wasn't there to preach anything. They just didn't agree with what I was doing. And I would always get looks and comments like, this is hurting you. You're not going to be well health-wise, blah, 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 blah. So like there was like that tension there. So I already wasn't really happy there. But also I had my two of my own dogs. And so when I heard that this was possible, I think a little bit of it was, whoa, I don't like being a lawyer. I don't want to be here anymore. I could do that. And I could learn to connect with my own dogs better. Like, what? Let's look into this, you know? And that might have just been enough right there. I don't really know, because it's funny. I don't really remember like that moment that I learned about it. It was almost like the knowledge was like in me and it just like surfaced and it just made sense. It's weird. I don't know. I can't put words to it.
Gotcha. So it just kind of unlocked a door that was already there inside you, and just floodgates were open, huh?
It's interesting because up until that point, I had been in school for my whole life. I went from high school to college to law school. So, and I was reading all the time for school. So up until that point, when I bought all those books, I had never read a book for fun, ever. Like not one time, because like, why do I want to read? All I do is read and study. And I just didn't like reading. I don't know, just law school kind of traumatized me a little bit. And so then I bought all these animal communication books. And I was reading all day, every day, like nonstop. I finished books like in 2 days. And I was like, what is happening? So it was just flowing, because again, I never like read a book and it was just like I was finishing book after book after book after book. My husband was laughing because like every week we had 3 more books in the mailbox. He goes like, are you finishing all of these? I'm like, yeah. It was cool.
That's cool. That's cool. So really most of, I guess, what, how much of it do you think is what you learned from the books versus what you learned in practice? Because I'm very much a learn on the job kind of person, right? And I, to be perfectly honest, I learned more from my mistakes than my successes.
Totally.
Maybe that's a human thing. I don't know. How much of it do you think you kind of intuited your way around versus actually learned in the books themselves?
I would say the books were probably like 10% because the books just gave you, one, the knowledge that this was possible, two, the reassurance that you can do this, and three, they did give you kind of like, hey, this is how you kind of get into the session. Make sure you're in a quiet meditative state. This is how the messages might come through. It's kind of like how you receive messages as humans. Some of you are visual learners, so you might receive images in your mind's eye. Some of you are more of a feeler, so you might just get like a sudden feeling or a knowing. So it gave you kind of like the foundations of like, this is how it works. But then really, like you said, it's practice, because until you're actually doing it, you don't know what it's like to receive those messages. So an example that I give in my workshops all the time is if I'm connecting in with an animal and they say, I really love the white house next door. I'm a very visual person. So in my mind's eye, I will probably see an image of a white building, and I'll say the white house next door. And then the humans are like, we live in a 300-acre farm and we have no neighbors. Like, I have no idea what that is. So you learn, okay, did you see a white house next door or did you see a white shed? But by you saying house, the humans are like, I don't know. So you learn to use your words properly. We as humans, we are addicted to nouns. White house. What you should say is, I see a white structure or a white building close to your house that your animal likes. Now, I'm not saying be vague. You don't want to be vague, but sometimes what you're seeing, your human brain is placing a noun on it as to what it is. The other day I did a session, and it still happens to me. I get better at it. But the other day I did a session and I asked this dog, what's your favorite thing to do? And I said out loud, she loves chewing on her favorite brown toy at nighttime. The humans are like, I have no idea what that is. She doesn't have a brown toy. And I was like, no, there's something brown that she chews on. And when I said there's something brown that she chews on, it clicked. The mom said, oh, that's my brown leather work shoe that I'm always taking from her. So when I said, rather than saying something brown she chews on, when I gave it a noun, when I said a brown toy, they didn't understand the message at first. So it's like you learn, and that only comes with practice. Yes, you could read in a book, describe what you're getting, don't identify it. But until you actually experience it for yourself, it doesn't really solidify in your brain. So the books are helpful at convincing you that you can do this and giving you kind of like a framework to follow a bit. But as you do your practice sessions, you develop your own style. How my sessions were when I first started are vastly different than how I do them now.
You just kind of hone and get better. I mean, but that's what you want, right? You always want to evolve, always get better, hone your craft sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and then it flows. Like when it's your thing, it just flows. If you're trying to follow someone else's framework, it's very much someone else's framework. But when you make it your own, it emanates you, which is special.
So when you're teaching your students, do you say, this is what works for me, this is the process that works for me, but yours may look a little different? I mean, is that kind
Absolutely, 100%. I always encourage people, your sessions need to be you. I'm going to give you what works for me, right? I'm the one giving this workshop. I can only speak for what works for me. But don't take what I say to be the only way, because there are a million other ways. I do encourage my students to start their session all the exact same, starting with the animal's personality. Because if you start a communication session and you start describing everything that the animal, like if they have pain in their body or things that really can't be verified, like if you say your animal's stomach hurts, if they're not throwing up, the humans might be like, well, no, he's fine. But if you start your sessions describing the animal's personality to a T, and describing things that you would have no way of knowing that can be verified by them, they're much more receptive to you later saying that your animal has a stomach ache. Then they might think, oh, wait, you know what? Maybe we should get better food, because people are skeptical. So I encourage my students to make the sessions their own. But there are a couple techniques that I've learned over the years that work, that I recommend they utilize, but still encouraging them to make it their own thing for sure.
So you feel like, well, I mean, because I was just imagining in my head, somebody like, they're employing you to do this thing for them, you still have to prove to them that this is real. Like, even though they're giving you money to do this, you still have to convince them.
Totally. And because it's funny, 99% of my clients are women. That's why I got so excited when you emailed me, because you're a man. Like, everyone in my world is a female. So I was like, yes. And then when I have men on my workshops, it's so cool, because I think men are just like, not that they don't love their animals. Of course they do. But I don't know that they're as open to, like, I don't know what it is, but I barely have any men in my world on this stuff. So it's really cool when men get involved, but it's always women doing the session. And I hear all the time, my husband thinks I'm crazy. My husband thinks you're psycho, right? Like, and then I do the session, and then I get an email back with, my husband's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. Now he's a believer. And it's just so cool. So you have very much have to convince people.
That's fascinating. And men specifically are problematic. I can't begin to imagine why you would have problems convincing men of anything. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, at least in my experience, because I'm down here in Texas, in the center of the reddest of the red state. So I guess I'm probably not your target audience normally for the workshops, but it tends to be men are, societally taught, not to pay any attention to feelings, or, not to be too soft or any of that stuff. And ultimately we're, trained to not be empathetic humans, which is the 180 of usually the message that is given to women, right? It's like, you're the caregiver, be empathetic. And when in reality, you're just saying, hey, be a good person, understand where other people are coming from. And, you should stay open. That's, so really, you're having to kind of fight against perhaps the partner, not necessarily, because I was thinking the person that's giving you the money, it's like, why do you have to convince them? They already came to you. But it's probably the partner that you're having to convince. So that actually totally makes sense.
Yeah, like when people are like, they'll submit a form, they'll submit their session, they'll put in the comment section, my husband thinks that this is totally nuts. I didn't tell him I'm doing this. And I'm just like, oh, like in the beginning, I hated reading that, because I was like, I have to do this perfect. Otherwise, like, but now I just don't care, because I'm like, I know it works. I know I can do this. I know it's real. And I just laugh when I see that. And I'm like, well, opinions are about to change in about an hour.
And I would assume, like, if you have that extra pressure, at least in the beginning, I'm assuming you've come to terms with it, but that extra pressure probably makes you a little bit more nervous, and maybe a little bit harder. Is it a little bit harder to kind of make those connections and kind of do the whole session? In
the beginning, totally, because having that pressure just kept you in your head. It put fear there. I have to be right. I have to do this correctly. I have to be good. And that keeps you out of like the balanced, light, intuitive flow. But now I see that, and it doesn't even faze me. Like, I'm just like, because I'm so used to people not believing it. And in the beginning, you like think you have to convince people that this is real, because you're not confident yourself. So like when you hear hateful comments or social media trolls, right, that just write the most awful thing ever, you feel like you have to prove that you can do this. But now I'm at the point where I'm not here to prove anything to anyone. I'm not here to convince anyone of anything. I'm here to just help people who want my help, because this is real in my reality, whether you think so or not. Like, animal communication might not be for everybody, and that's fine. We're all here to learn different lessons and to have a different journey and a path. But for me, this is reality. This is the truth for me. And I want to help people who are in alignment with that. But certainly people who don't believe me, I still want to do sessions for them, because then they're like, oh, wow. And then it changes their whole reality. And then with that brings more compassion to their animals. And that changes everything. And that's my main goal, is the more animals' voices heard, the more compassion we bring to our planet, which the more compassion we bring to our planet, way better for everything and everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally resonate with that sentiment. Like, to me, the idea of, is it real, right? I'm doing air quotes. I know this is like usually the audio medium, but I'm doing air quotes anyway. Is it real? To me, doesn't always matter, right? Just some things, like if there's, like if you think you can fly and you're going to jump off a building, probably say that's a thing you should not, but like this, even if you don't believe it, but positive things come from it and negative things do not come from it, where's the harm? Why not be a little open-minded? Why not give it a day in court? It's a little law pun for you there.
Let's not go to court. I'm sick of court.
Just the idea that being a little bit more empathetic, being a little bit more intentional with your actions. Like I was trying to put it into words, like how I would, like in my head, if I was trying to do this, like almost it feels like mental Tai Chi. Like there's these ladies who do Tai Chi in the park, and their movements are so intentional and they're so fluid and smooth, and just the way they place all of the parts of their body as they move around. Like to me, it kind of feels like almost like a dance that you're doing with your communication. That to me, that's one that's very zen and beautiful, but also just the intentionality that you're going to put with everything you're doing. I love the idea of that. So whether you believe it or not, I feel like this is like a really positive thing.
Yeah. And something you just said, I want to write down, that you said it's like a dance. I want to start using that, because if you think about it, I always tell my students, the one thing that will mess up your communications is if you start getting frustrated or you're trying to force. And if you're dancing, if you're putting resistance in or trying to force something, or you're getting frustrated, you're not going to flow and dance well. So perfect visual image. I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what it's like. You got to just like go with the flow.
And I suppose sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow. You just have to be loose and fluid with it, right?
Yep. Because for me, some animal communicators, when they talk to the animals, they don't ask any questions. The information just comes. But for me, I ask a lot of questions. I'm a very heavy question-based animal communicator. That being said, anything the animal wants to share outside of my questions still comes through. But like I have certain topics that I want to make sure I always cover. So I always start my sessions out with an open-ended question. Show me your personality. What do you want to say? But then I ask my questions. But sometimes the animals don't want to answer my question at that moment. They want to talk about something else. So like you said about being fluid, I have to be like, okay, let's talk about that. We'll come back to this question later. You can't have like it has to be this way, because that's creating too much structure and control. And then you're like closing yourself off, as opposed to like being open to everything else that wants to come through.
That's interesting. So you said you have a partner. Were they on the skeptical bus at first? Like,
no, like, how was that? He knew, his name's Michael. So he knew that being a lawyer was destroying me. Like I was just, everything was not flowing. And when I first learned about this, at first he was just like, I don't think he knew really what to think about it. He wasn't against it. He didn't think I was crazy. He was just like, is this really possible? And then he was just slowly watching me do this. And every time I would get a feedback email, I'd be like, babe, look what this person said. And this dog said this, and they said this. And so he was just like, what? So I think he was more excited and amazed by it. But now he can talk to animals. He doesn't do it professionally, but he was out visiting a friend in California, and the cat came through and told him things. So like it just happens to him, or with our animals. So he was just like on board, just watching it unravel as it happened. But no, he never was skeptical. I have like the most supportive family. So even my parents, they weren't ever skeptical of it. They might have thought like, I'll tell you this, they never thought that I would grow a business to the extent of what I have now in animal communication. And my dad will never admit to this, but when he and my stepmom helped move me out of my Center City law firm office, he was like super cranky. And I was like to my stepmom, I'm like, Kathy, what the heck is dad's deal? Like, what is his deal? He's annoying me right now. Like, why is he so grumpy? And Kathy's like, Nick, this is hard for him. And I'm like, what? But my dad loves me, wants me to be happy. But like the status in this society of, oh, my daughter's a lawyer, that provides some level of security and finances, right? So like it was just different. It's not like the norm, right? So, but everyone was just super intrigued by it and like totally supportive 100%. And now my dad, he's the IT manager at a police station. He always tells all the cops, my daughter's an animal psychic, and do you have any pets? Like she can talk to them. It's so funny, the transition that happened.
He's like a sideshow barker out there for you.
Yeah, yeah.
But like I could totally empathize with your dad on that. I've got 2 idiot kids, one's 14, one's 17. I love them to death, but they're the worst, but they're the best. I say they're the worst because it's somebody described it once as kids are like taking your heart out of your chest and telling it to go play in traffic, right? It's just, as a parent, you want to make sure they're going to be okay. It's like,
sure,
I'm a lawyer. You'll be financially taken care of the rest of your life. I'm not a lawyer anymore. I'm going to go do this totally one-off thing that's like just all dependent on me. And it's like, that's, as a parent, that's like scary. It's like you're happy, excited, but just terrified for their safety. Like, so I could totally
100%. And like when I first started doing the animal communication, I would get asked all the time by aunts, uncles, grandparents, in-laws, well, you're still going to keep your law license active, right? And I'm like, why? I'm successful in this. Like, I'm not ever going back. And they're like, don't say never. And I'm like, no, I'm never going back to being a lawyer. And so for the first couple of years, I kept it active and I paid the fees and I had to do the continuing education credits. And then I was like, screw this. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to pay a couple $100 a year, travel to this city and do 24 hours of continuing education credits every year. Like, I'm not ever going to be a lawyer. So I allowed it to, quote, lapse. Doesn't mean I can't reactivate it. But like, if I would have kept it active, I could have been a lawyer at any time, right? If it's inactive for more than 3 years, you have to go to the court and ask permission to reactivate it. So it's just like one extra step. And that's where I'm at, because I'm like, I'm never going to use this. I'm not going to pay $300 every year for the rest of my life for nothing, you know? But it's funny. Like, I think just this year, maybe towards the end of last year, is finally when the family stopped asking me, well, you still have your license active, right? Because now they see like I'm doing it. And it's just, I think it's just opening eyes as to like, okay, this is possible.
Well, you're not just doing it, you are thriving. Like, I look at your site. It is so polished. I'm not sure if you're doing that on your own, but it looks.
Heck no, I'm not. My website, you mean? No way. I found like the most amazing web designer. I made a template myself. Like, I bought a template and I was pretty proud of it. And then she recently revamped it, and I think we redid it since you emailed me. So it's even way better now.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just like, and I love my website. I always say, like, because now that she redid it, I'm like, it's so cool. Like, it's a real website. And my husband's like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, it's like a professional website. And she's like, yeah, Nikki.
Yeah, it's polished. The level of work you're putting out, you're doing like, I mean, I assume you're booked up. You're doing these regular workshops. I mean, you're doing it. You're putting in the work. Like, it's thriving. It's a thriving business. So, as like a parent, I would be super proud. I'd be super stoked to see that.
Yeah, I think they see it now, and they're just happy for me, because I'm not only secure in what I'm doing, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing, which is important. And everything about me changed when I was happy, because when you're doing a job you hate, everything else in your life like falls apart because you're miserable and you're not happy. Yeah.
And then once you finally break free of that and you find, I can actually mold the environment around me to make me happy, it's like, I'm never going back to that again. Like, forget it. Like, I think that, to me, that was one of the biggest like gravitational shifts in my orbit ever. You know, it's like leaving a really bad job that I'd been at for a really long time and realizing like, I can choose to be happy, and I'm the only one in charge of my happiness.
100%. And being able to work and see my dogs all day long, and to be able to work in sweatpants or in whatever clothing I choose, like, so much better than a uncomfortable suit, an hour-and-a-half train ride one way. It's like, I can't even imagine doing a 9-to-5 or a 9-to-6 ever again. Like, no way, not happening. And when you work for yourself, you end up working more as it is, because like, that's my biggest struggle. I start too early, I end too late, because I think of things and I want to do this. And like, I'm trying to, okay, I need to have a couple days where I'm not doing anything for work. I don't need to respond to that email at 7 a.m. when they just emailed me 10 minutes ago. Like it can wait, you know? So it's just finding that balance of like, okay, separate. Because when you leave the office, you're going home. But when you work from home, it's like, where's that boundary, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I've worked remote for a while and I will never go back to an office.
Mm-hmm.
Testify. Amen.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely know what you mean. Like once you're challenged with something, like you get, to me, I love a challenge. I love to solve problems and stuff like that. So I've got a challenge and I actually enjoy doing this thing. It's like, oh, it's hard. You know, it's like a dog with their favorite toy. It's hard to get it away from them sometimes,
Right.
whether it's a leather shoe or not. So I totally get like that work-life separation. So I've been in IT my entire life, and burnout is part of the job. You know, it's basically the uniform you wear when you take the job. Is like, you know, you're gonna get burned out, but it's cyclical, right? It gets really bad and then it comes back into, and then it gets really bad and then it comes back into profile. And just, I guess, what is it? Wisdom of doing it enough and long enough is you kind of mellow out that curve a little bit. It's not so severe. So that's cool.
It's funny, Greg, you mentioned that you do IT, because when you first emailed me, of course I looked at all your stuff, right? Because we're nosy human beings. And your YouTube, I'm like, what are these videos? Like there was all like the IT software stuff. And I was like, my brain hurts. So it's like, for me, my language of animal communication is so simple. For you, your language of IT is so simple. But when I look at your language of IT, I'm like, what the heck is he saying? Now, I didn't watch the videos. It was just the titles. I was like, what does that mean? It was pretty funny.
Yeah. It's a whole thing. Yeah.
It's a lot.
But it's so funny. Like that also fascinates me too. Like when and I'm by no means an expert, but like when you see experts in their domain, even if I don't necessarily know what's going on, still watching, I guess the level at which they work is always really interesting to me.
Yes.
So when I find somebody who is at a high performing level of whatever it is, like yourself, that fascinates me just to see the machine move, you know, like how it all works. Like that's so interesting to me. And yes, I poked around and I saw your YouTube. You have like 300 plus videos, but there's only 4 public. And I was like, oh, I wonder what's hidden back in there. I'm sure there's some interesting stuff.
No. What the short. So I have 4 regular videos, but if you go to the shorts, the tab over, that's all the other videos. So what I do when I post a video on TikTok or Instagram, I also share it to YouTube. So they're all shorts. So it's in a different section. So I don't really have any, like I have a couple, but they're not even animal communication, like YouTube videos. Everything else is a short, which is like under a minute. Yeah.
Okay. So social media, I'm assuming you do really well on social media, right?
That's how everything exploded for me. Like when I was I started with Facebook and Instagram. And it's funny because I didn't like social media at all. I didn't have social media when I first started this. And my husband's like, Nikki, you need to make a social media. And I'm like, no, I hate social media. I'm not doing it. He's like, it's free marketing. It's free networking. Like, how are you not going to do it? So then I was using his Facebook to post things that I was doing. And then he's like, you need to make your own Facebook, because my whole Facebook is like stuff you're doing. So I made Instagram and Facebook, and with Instagram, like Facebook kind of died out a bit, but with Instagram, at least for me, I started getting people and I was like 2 to 3 weeks booked out. So it was enough to sustain me for what I was doing. And then I made a TikTok, and within like within like a week of TikTok, I went completely viral and it just like exploded. And I was like, what is happening? And I woke up one night. So I went to bed one night, woke up the next morning. I had a video go viral overnight. And I woke up to 37 animal communication orders that came through in the middle of the night. And I was awesome. Like, what? Because I can only do like 2 a day. I can't do this all day long. Yeah. So I was like, 37, like do the math. I'm like, holy smokes. And then I was like, this is super awesome, right? And then like 2 days later, the same thing happened. Another video went viral. I woke up to 49 more readings. And I was like, oh, so like amazing problem to have, but like a problem. So I had to completely shut down my booking. I had to create a wait list and stop it, because I was like, I can't keep up with this. And then at my price then was a lot lower than it is now. And I increased the price to try and slow it down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first time I got that big batch, I increased the price to slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
That did nothing. That second batch came through. I increased the price. That did nothing. And then I was like, okay, I need to just close it down because people are paying whatever I put there. Like, I'm not doing this to get more money. I'm just trying to slow it down. And it wasn't working. So social media, TikTok specifically, like, got me to like every sphere of the world. It was just really cool. So I have clients that are in India, Europe, Canada, like Indonesia, Australia. It's just super awesome.
That's so cool. Dude, what do you think about it? What do you think it was about your videos that really connected with people? Do you think it's just, this is so different than what they're accustomed to? Or do you think maybe it's a little bit of unlocking that door in their brain like yours was?
I think it's both, but people love their animals. No matter what you do or who you are, man, female, CEO, whatever, like, you love your animals. So it's really cool because my profession, I can kind of squeeze my way in there no matter what or who you are because you love your animals. So a video where someone's talking about how they can talk to their animals or talk to your animals, it makes you pause, like, what did she just say? So it's interesting because, like, if I were doing like animal training or whatever, I'm only going to target a certain amount of people that actually want to like do that. But everybody wants to hear what their animal has to say. Like, why not? And in the beginning, some of the videos kept going viral from all the hate comments, because the more comments, the algorithm gets boosted. But then, so the more hate comments, the more the video took off, and then the more interested people saw it. It was just a fascinating phenomenon. Like, the hate comments in the beginning totally derailed me. I got called a schizophrenic in like 20 different languages in about 7 hours. Every awful name, like fraud in a million different languages, scammer, you know, all that. So in the beginning, when you're not confident in yourself, you kind of feel like, what do they call it? Like the imposter syndrome or something. I don't like to name things, but you like think, wait, can I do this? Am I really making this up? And they get in your head. And my husband said a great thing early on in my journey, because I would get so upset and I wouldn't be able to do sessions for a couple of days because I was like so in my head. And he was like, Nikki, these comments are only bothering you because you're not confident. If you were confident, it wouldn't matter what they say because you're not here to prove anything. And him saying that shifted something in my brain. I was like, you're right. So now when I get a hate comment, I laugh, or I just feel sorry that the person's missing out on something really cool. Like, it doesn't even faze me. But social media, totally where it took off, 100%.
And that's, I think that's a sentiment I've heard echoed over and over, that most people nowadays I hear say, don't read the comments, like avoid the comments. But, you know, it's like, well, one, you got to feed the algorithm, right? They want to see that engagement. And that's what I think when I see hate comments. I'm like, ooh, little engagement there. I will maybe block it or ban it, but it still feeds the algorithm, right? So it's like, so like, appreciate you.
Yeah. Because of that, what you said about how like people are like, don't read the comments. I stopped reading the comments because it was just, they were so awful. Yeah. So I hired a virtual assistant to help respond to DMs because there was just so many. And I just frankly was like, I was spending time responding to comments, which is fine, but I would end up leaving pissed off because of all the negative things I was reading. Yeah. So I hired a virtual assistant to help me respond to comments and stuff. So now she sees all that stuff and like, and she'll flag certain ones for me that she can't respond to. But emails I do myself and everything. But like YouTube comments, I will never look at the YouTube comments ever, because YouTube comments are never good. In my experience on my shorts, they're all awful. I don't even care about that. Because my main two things right now are Instagram and TikTok. When I start doing like real YouTube videos, like not just the shorts, then I'll engage with the comments and stuff. But in the beginning, I did hire someone because I was like, I want to respond to these comments because the people who are genuine and want to learn, like I want them to have their questions answered. But I don't want to see the other 50 million awful comments there too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I talked to a really successful YouTuber named Quinn Dunkey. She's amazing and awesome. And she does machining, which is traditionally thought of as a male thing. And she was saying that she has to fend off so much bullshit.
Yeah.
That if she says the exact same thing that one of the male YouTube machinists says, zero comment. Nobody will say anything. But the fact that it's her saying it, she has to defend herself and all this stuff. And, you know, beyond that, people make misogynistic, you know, messages or talk about how she looks. It's like the male YouTube machinist guy, nobody's talking about how good he looks today or, you know, he looks you know, it's like, it's like, why do I have to do this? Like it's incongruous. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
And for like the negativity for me, it's like when I go outside and it's really cold, it like slowly leaches into me. And when I come back into the warm, it still takes me a while to warm back up. You know, it's like no matter how much I harden my heart or think I'm tough, it's still, it seeps in and it takes a little while to get it out. And sometimes it's easier just to not see it. Like, I've talked to people who can handle it. I can't.
I still, like, I'll find myself, because I like to respond to everyone. I want to make sure every comment, every DM, every email is responded to. It's important for me. And I'm at the position in my business where that's still possible. So I'll still find myself, like, if it's a weekend, looking at the comments because I want to respond. And then I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I just am like you said, the negative ones, they don't throw me off my game like I used to, but some of them are just so awful. And I'm like, I'm just pissed off. My eyeballs even read that. Like, go away, you know? Yeah. So like, it's just people are so weird. Humans are weird.
I just want a bot that auto responds and says, who hurt you?
Right? I know. And sometimes, like, if I'm in a mood, I'll respond. I never respond like negatively or mean, but I'll be like, a thing I get all the time is, did you miss your meds today? Or, honey, check yourself into a psych ward. And I would respond with like, why would I do that? I love my life. Or I just give like a jab back. Or, are you feeling okay? And I'm like, yeah, last time I checked, I feel great. And my husband's like, Nikki, you're feeding it. Why are you even doing that? I'm like, because I'm in a mood and I'm still a human being.
Yeah.
But then after I do that, I'm like, why did I just do that? You know, like that's just ego. Like, don't do that.
You need to have a copy pasta that says, you know what, I would check myself in, but I'm $20 short. Here's my Venmo.
Oh my gosh, I might need you to give me responses like that. That is perfect. Oh my gosh. I'm using that because I get that psych ward comment all the time. I'm totally doing that.
Yeah. Say, oh,
hey, and then maybe if I put my Venmo, maybe if I put my Venmo, people will see that comment and think that was an awesome comment and then Venmo me. And then I'll give you a percentage if that happens.
Oh, you got it. You got it. This was my plan all along. All right.
That was awesome.
I tell you what, Nikki, we're coming up on time and I try and be extremely respectful of time. It's one of my, I don't know, not pet peeve. I don't have pet peeves anymore. But it's one of my things I'm a stickler about. So right here at the end, I like to say, is there any way specifically that you'd like people to interact with you out on the wild web? Maybe your new book coming up. I had this sneaking suspicion there's a book in your future if you're not actively working on it now. But I know you've got the workshops, you got the website, all the stuff. Social medias, what do you want people to take a look at?
So the book isn't happening now, but everyone keeps telling me I'm going to write a book. So
I know you
one
will.
day,
I feel it. I sense it.
One day it's going to happen. But what's super cool is there is a TV show in the works right now. We're actually in the process. The production company is pitching the various networks. So hopefully in the next month we hear back, which will be super awesome. But for now, people can engage with me, my website, nikkivasconez.com, or my Instagram, my TikTok, my YouTube, all my social medias are Nikki Vasconez. And I post daily about my animal communication sessions, about tips to enhance your animal's life. On my website, I have a freebie little guide for you of 20 ways to enhance your animal's life. You'll see it all over my website and it'll be emailed right to you. It's super cool things I've learned over the years of talking to the animals, of what they like, what they don't like, and just ways that we might not have thought of, like, oh, wow, that can really make a difference. So that's there for you. My thing, like you mentioned, is I have workshops and I have an online school. I want to teach people to do this because me as Nikki, I can only talk to so many animals a day. But if I teach as whoever I can and they all can talk to animals per day, like that's a lot more animals' voices heard. So one thing I want you guys to be cautious of is there are so many scamming accounts and imposter accounts on social media of me. I'll never direct message you for readings. They'll create profiles that look identical to mine. They'll put my real website, but they'll DM you. Hi, honey, I'm a God-gifted pet psychic. I would love to consider you for a reading. And then they give you like a PayPal or Venmo. Never me. Like, you only get my services through my website, but I'm there. All those resources are there for you on all the different platforms and through my website.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, Nikki, thank you for being so open and honest and giving of your time. To me, time is one of the greatest gifts you can give anybody because it is such a precious resource. Thank you. And I'm going to click stop on all this stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg.